Hello, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Justin Sloan.
And I'm Paul Zeidman. I'd like to say hi to our Sperry special guest. Our what a great way to start.
I'm a professional.
Yeah. I was going to say I'm a professional broadcaster. Our very special guest, Tony Farina, also his pen name A.R. Farina. We'll get into that in a little bit. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me. Very excited. Love the show.
Great. Our pleasure. Boy, this guy writes a lot. I was going through your bio. Books, comics, plays. He's also a podcaster too. We're going to get into all that in just a minute. But first, Justin.
Yeah, so stuff we've been watching, listening to, all that. I just finished Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. I don't think I've talked about it yet on this show. I don't remember if I have, but it's by Jason Schreier, and it's. Have I talked about it?
The Triumph, you did talk about it last week.
How video games are made. Okay, well, I finished it now this week. And, so it's great. It goes into The Witcher 3, a bunch of indie games, Diablo, all this stuff, like the makings of, and like gets more into the details and talks about Star Wars 1313. And so, so last week I had started it, and now I have finished it, and I highly recommend it.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, we as a family, we went to see Barbie last night. And I gotta say, I went in trying not to know anything about it. I've seen all the write-ups about it, but I've been trying to avoid spoilers. And I gotta say, it was very well done. If you had told me, 6 months ago, first, I knew there was going to be a Barbie movie, but it was going to be such a phenomenon and that people were going to say, it's actually really, really good. And it's very funny. I was like, what, you got to be kidding me. But no, we really enjoyed it. I was really surprised at very impressed with how well written it was. And I the acting was great and the story was very original. I just can't get over how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, highly recommended.
Wow,
excellent. Tony,
anything on your side?
Yeah, well, I'm not constantly reading. I'm a big reader. I'm actually finishing I'm listening to the audio version of Lightbringer, the 6th book in Pierce Brown's Red Rising trilogy. Mm-hmm. He wrote 3 and we thought it was over, and then he just kept going. So I'm listening to that because I've listened to it the whole time. Every version I've listened to, the narrator is Tim Gerald Reynolds, and he's really good. And I'm actually rereading this Gillian and Mariko's This One Summer. Because I'm going to do a friend has a band book series that she puts out in October, and we're going to cover Tamaki Cousins This One Summer, which blows my mind that that's a band book. So that's what I've been
doing. What is it about it that makes it banned?
Well, I don't know. Have you ever read it, This One Summer?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's well, you never know with people. So it's a YA graphic novel. So there's these girls. They're like a year and a half apart, so it takes place during that time when that age, that year and a half matters, like 15 and 13 and a half kind of thing. So but they kind of spy. They're like in a summer town in Canada, and they're swearing, and there's talk about pregnancy and talk about lesbianism and what it's just like teenagers being teenagers. It's really truly just This One Summer. It's a very slice of life, but it is like a coming of age story too, and like how do you stay friends through that 2 awkward years kind of thing. It's just lovely, and they're cousins, and they wrote it together, and so it blows my mind. I don't really know why. It's just a beautiful book. And so when my friend who does the series put that out there, I'm like, oh well, that one, because I'll be on there. I'd love to hear, because she does the research and then tells us during the show what all the things. My assumption is the language and the talk of sex, because teenagers apparently have never had sex before. I didn't know. I guess this is new to me, and if they do, then it needs to be banned.
Does she ever get to talk to the authors themselves if given the opportunity?
She has tried that before. I don't know that she managed to this year, but actually on the show that I am on, somebody I interviewed on my show, the graphic novelist Brenna Thumler, is going to come on with us. So she'll interview a graphic novelist, but she has yet to be banned. So there's still hope.
Still hope. Okay. Worthy goals indeed.
Yes,
okay, so Tony, tell us a little bit about yourself. I was reading your bio, and I think it's a fascinating story about how you became a writer. So if you could kind of talk us through that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a teacher. But I started reading at a really young age, and I was just kind of like a weird ADHD. I was undiagnosed, but I was just kind of like a weird loner kid who liked books and talking to myself and whatever. So I just read and read and read. And then as kids do, the more you read, the more stories you want to tell. Like when I was reading the Narnia books when I was in kindergarten, which I was 5.
Wow.
And so, at some point in time, you're like, well, I could tell a story. And they were bad, but you're just kind of always telling stories. But by 12, I actually wrote my first play, which was bad, but my 7th grade teacher liked it enough. It was just fun. And so I've never really stopped writing, but, I also am, raised by farmers and small business owners, and being a writer wasn't like nobody said, what you could do for a living. You could just do that as your job. So of course I became a teacher, which is a thing that a lot of us do. And so, yeah, I've done lots of freelance work. Like in college, I wrote for papers. And then after college, I wrote small town newspaper, like covering the local baseball game, like the things that we all do when we're trying to write. And I got paid $20 to sit at a baseball game of watching not my own children play, things like that. And so I just kept working on it. And, then I had kids, and as you do, you just kind of, but in the background, I was always writing stories and writing essays and doing things. And then I got my MFA and really kind of cracked the ability to write a novel, because I was really more of a short story writer, plays and poems and writing songs and stuff like that. And then once I learned how to write a novel, now I'm like trying to figure out somebody asked me to add a short story to a collection, and I'm like, oh no, I've forgotten how to do that. So
how to write a short story?
Yeah, just because I'm so in novel space now, because I sold this series, so I'm constantly writing novel. Like now I'm always thinking, until I finished the first novel, I thought I could never do it. And now that I've cracked the code, it's like, okay, I got to stop that line of thinking. Not everything can be, I don't have 100 pages to get to, to reveal that. I have to do it in 10 or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you, for those who are doing the video portion of this podcast, you can see that the background for you is your novel, Welcome to Mansfield,
yes.
The Austen Chronicles, Book 1. So, so what is that about? And also I have to, because if there's Book 1 in the title, that implies there's going to be more books.
There will. Yes. So I'm a big Jane Austen fan. My wife's a librarian. So books are our jam. Our poor children. One of the youngest, though, totally became a medical lab scientist. She was like, screw you people. I'm not. She reads books, though. She likes books too. Like, we one of the big family events when they were younger, we took them to see Scott Westerfeld, the young adult novelist, do a reading. Like that was a big family outing for us. That's what kind of dorks we are. So anyway, we're big Janeites. I love Jane Austen. And Mansfield Park is just a book that I think is misunderstood, and people think, oh, it's long and it's boring and she's not exciting, and all of those things I guess you could argue. But I studied that book during my MFA as a character analysis, and I was like, it'd be fun to see if I could set it in now, like have it be, what would that be? And so I wrote it just as a one-off and kind of as a cheeky thing just for me and my wife, added Easter eggs for other Jane Austen characters. I put a shared universe. And then my publishers for Horsemen, they only do series. That's what they do. Oh. And so as my wife and I were just talking, I'm like, well, I sort of did this. What if I just retold all 6 Jane Austen books, but in a connected universe set in the now? And so like, try that. So I pitched them, and my publisher, who normally does like more romance and science fiction, they don't really do this kind of thing, but they were looking to make the move into just kind of more, like slice of life YA, as opposed to like, science fiction teenagers who save the world YA, which is great. And I would love to read those. But so luckily they said yes. And so the second book is at the editor right now, and it'll be out next year.
So is it just going to be 2 books total? Or
it'll be 6. I'm doing all 6 of Jane Austen. Yep, I'm doing all 6 of them. So this was Mansfield Park, and then the next one is my version of Sense and Sensibility, and I'm working on my version of Pride and Prejudice right now.
Wow, that is fantastic. I'm going to let Justin take over, because we've got so many other things to talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back a step. So is this your first novel you mentioned?
Well, it's the first novel I've had published.
Okay,
I wrote a novel for my MFA program, and previously, like the only other thing that I remotely considered a novel was like, I wrote a bunch of short stories about the same character. And so I tried to pack, like when I was in college, that was like just like every so often I would like use that character to kind of deal, as my own little therapy, like we do.
Cool.
And so I kind of worked through my stuff through using this character, using her. So I do have that collection out there. It's probably not very good. I haven't read it in a while, but it's very it's very 90s. I graduated from college in 95, and you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the question, was like, if somebody was going to start writing right now, let's say they're 23, just graduated, whatever, taking a little time, they're like, I want to write a novel. How much writing do you think they need to do before they publish, based on your own journey?
Oh, well, that is man. It's hard to say, because I think when you crack it, that's the language I use for myself. When I'm working on a new novel, I'm like, I'm not a plotter. I'm a contemplative writer. Like, I take a walk and I ride my bike and I talk to the characters and I do those things. Like, I have full-on conversations with them in my head. I'm like, what about this? And I try to figure them out. And I play music that I think they would like. And every book has its own soundtrack. So then once I crack it, then it just rolls. And so I feel like for anybody writing a book, unless you feel that, oh, this is it, then keep writing. And it's okay to write and write. I mean, you don't want to do like Wonder Boys and have the 100,000-page novel that never ends, but you definitely want to, you want to write until you feel like, till you are happy with it. Not like the imposter syndrome that all of we authors have. Not like, I hate everything I do, but like, till you're happy with, like, I feel good about this story. Like, I'd be comfortable handing this to my friend and say, read this, I did it, and be proud of it. And that's when you're ready to try to publish it, is when you are proud of it. So that's the best thing I can say. But I mean, what Ray Bradbury said, after I went to college and did everything, I went to the library, and that was when my real education started. So that is always the advice, is to read too, never give up on reading, because I think, I'm retelling one of the greatest writers in all of English stories, but, I've got my own individual, my non-Austen stories that I write too. But you have to read, you see what the craft is and what are somebody else doing and what's an inspiration I can get. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Tim Gerard Reynolds narrated one of my series, but it was written back in like 2016. And so I'm very scared to go back and listen to it. I know he would do it justice and make it way better than it probably sounds on the page.
He's amazing, right? So did you get to meet him and talk through it with him?
Oh. Never did. No. But I got to listen to a little bit of his voice reading my book, and that was awesome. I was like,
that must have been really cool. For sure. Yeah, he's so good, right? But yeah.
On that note of going back and reading your own stuff, I'm scared. So what was your publishing journey like, though? Like, how did you find these publishers, and did you query like crazy before?
Oh, my God, the exhaustion. Yeah. So like my master's thesis, which is still not sold, because it's a standalone book. This is listed as a YA book, the Austen Chronicles are, because it takes place at a college. So it's kind of that new adult, YA crossover area.
Yeah.
Yo, man, like years and years of being told no.
Right.
And then they'd be like, they do a full request. Because for people who haven't queried before, you just send 10 pages. And you're like, I spent 4 years on this, and here's 10 pages that are supposed to represent everything. Right. So yeah, I queried. I did a lot of searching for agents. I got a lot of nibbles on agents. I got a few nibbles on some independent publishers. And then that's why I was just writing this, Welcome to Mansfield, just for me. I was just doing it to do it. Cause I got to keep writing. Cause if I'm just getting these rejections, it's easy to get weighed down by being told no all day. Mm-hmm. So I just kept writing to keep myself busy there. Cause you could just send 10 queries a day. But yeah, so it took me several years, and that book still is yet to be published. I did get one offer on it, but when I read the fine print on the contract, it was not something that I felt comfortable with, with the ownership of things. So, and I know it's like beggars can't be choosers, but I made hopefully the right decision long term for that book. But yeah, so this publisher, a friend of mine, she's an actor and writer herself, Tanya Todd, the one who's hosting the Banned Books show. She's the one who sent these to me, because we actually have a different essay collection coming out. I have where myself and some friends, we've put together a collection of essays on comic books, which I know this is your jam. And my argument is, as an English teacher, that comic books are literature. And so my thesis was, we could prove that. We could set out and prove that. We could tell all these different ways of like making direct connections. So like my essay is proving that Poison Ivy is inspired by Rappaccini's Daughter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I make those connections. And then other people did different things. And we it's called Comics Lit. And this publisher, my publisher, Four Horsemen, has a nonfiction wing. So as I was looking through their stuff at their nonfiction wing, as we were pitching this collection of essays, I saw this. So it's totally because of something else that I came across it. And then when I queried them with this, I queried another small independent publisher, and they both wanted it. But they came back first and said they'd buy the whole series, and the other one was only interested in the one book as a standalone. And so that was cool. It was weird, like when it rains, it pours kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I love the cover art here. So I'd love to hear about that journey. Like how, once you finally got your publisher, what was like the editing like and the getting the cover, and did you have any say in all that kind of stuff?
I did. Yeah, they're pretty good. So this cover, Jen Kotstick is her name. She's a graphic designer who did my cover. It was very important to me that the cover, because Jane Austen has a very, straight white girl thing. Like some people think all the movies are straight white girls. And I wanted it to be that anybody could read it and feel like I could be the lead in a Jane Austen, male, female, regardless of race. And so I wanted to make sure that the cover didn't have an actual picture, that it was this. So I wrote it up, like when you submit your book to them, you kind of say what you're thinking about. And then Jen, the artist that I was like, I wonder if she could take a whack at it. And she sent me like 3 or 4 different options of this, different versions based on kind of my visual, like my written description of what I'd look for. And this was like, she sent this, what you're seeing, what the actual cover is in one of her first runs. And I was like, wow, she's like nailed it. And so now that she's going to work, I'm going to work with her for the rest of the series. And so it'll be more like so everyone will kind of have the silhouette of the main character. So again, no race, anybody could be that character. And then the backgrounds will be different depending on what they're doing. So that was cool. And editing, Four Horsemen's thing is it's your book. Mm-hmm. We are going to be essentially copy editors and give you suggestions. So there was nothing that wasn't like, there was nothing that I had in there that they said no to. There was nothing in there that they were like, oh, this will sell better if. Their whole push is, it's your book, tell your story. We'll just make it look as good as it can be. But it's never one of those, like you're reading a book and you're like halfway through, it's pretty clear that some editor got in the way and you're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Or you're in the 3rd book and suddenly it's taking a turn that feels a little forced. You see that in movies all the time where you can see the studio. They stay out of the way. Yeah. Yeah. No studio notes at all. So they gave me a few suggestions. But for the most part, it was just like copy edits and stuff. So I'm really lucky in that regard. And I know that also means that they're a small to middle-sized publisher. So it's not like I'm getting I'm not going to be in Oprah's book club or Reese's book. I don't have that. They're not going to get that. It's not one of the big 4. But that's why they call themselves the Four Horsemen, though, is because they're bringing forth the publishing apocalypse. That's their thing. So I really appreciate it, though, because I've talked to other writers who've had to make really big concessions, to get their books published. And I understand why, and it's probably because of them that I felt comfortable saying no to the one place who looked at my other book, because I felt like, oh, well, it's got to be another publisher out there who's doesn't want me to make this kind of change,
Yeah, really cool. And then what have you been doing in that regard of, obviously not going on Oprah or whatever and getting her book club, but podcast right here. What else have you had to do? Have you gotten to do book signings or book readings, or what else are you to promote?
Yeah, I've done a couple of podcasts so far. DC Gomez had me on. You guys, thank you so much again. I'm just so thrilled. I'm going to do another one next week. Who's a friend of mine? I've been on a couple of other friends' podcasts, so they've been great to me and like being out there in the forefront. I actually just in the first week of first week of October, I'm going to be in not upstate, in the Hudson Valley part of New York. At Mount St. Mary's College, being a keynote speaker and doing a week on creativity and creative writing up there at Mount St. Mary's College. So that's going to be super cool. Because they're a sister school from where I work. They're like, so I know somebody there who's like, hey, we need somebody for this thing. You're a writer. You want to come do this? We'll pay you. I was like, what? Yes, you did. I was going to do it for airfare and a cookie, but if you're going to send me money, I'll take it too. And then my publisher is trying to set, because I live in Florida. It looks like they may be doing something in like around Christmas time. And then the college where I went to up in Michigan, going to be back up there for a family thing in September. And they're going to, I'm just emailing back and forth. I may do an event at like where my college library was, or my college town.
Cool.
Yeah. So trying slowly but surely. It's hard, right? People are like, we don't know who you are. So I appreciate you guys taking a chance. You're like, but that's what your show is. That's what I love about your show. You're just like, you aren't. I heard back from one person, you're sending out all these queries to be on podcasts. And one person wrote back and said, oh man, your book sounds cool. And this was the thing. You're not famous enough to be on our show. And I was like, cool. Thanks. Well, you're really helping.
Well, if I was on your podcast, I would be famous.
Right. Exactly. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I want to get back to the comics issue.
Yes.
First of all, I'm assuming longtime reader, and here's the inevitable question: Marvel or DC or Independence? I guess.
Well, that's a great question. So as I'm holding my Batman mug, so
okay.
and I do have a Tim Drake Robin tattoo.
Oh wow.
So DC, but my first comic was a Green Lantern. It was the one with the Demolition Team on the cover. That was the very first comic I ever bought. And then I kind of went crazy going to flea markets and everything. So I'm equal opportunist. DC and Marvel. My cousin was a big X-Men fan, so I love the X-Men, of course. Spider-Man's awesome. Like Kitty Pryde is great. Everybody loves Kitty Pryde. In that Weezer song when they sing about that, like in the garage, you're like, do you know me? Are you singing my life in the garage? But I love indie comics. Like that's my show is about indie comics called Indie Comic Spotlight. And so I read the original Turtles when they were, still like, I don't know, I had them in my hand, like a reprint or something in the 80s. I got those. And I was like, this is crazy. You can do this. And then Don Chin did a knockoff of them called Adolescent Radioactive Black Belt Hamsters, which I loved. And I'm like, again, you can do this? I didn't know these were things. So after that, I really got into indie comics. And I was, end of high school, early college at the Image Revolution. Mm-hmm. So to see that indie comic change, and, I always call Karen Berger Saint Karen because she gave us Vertigo comics. So I would say I read indie comics the most, but I still love my superhero battles. Who doesn't
right.
want to watch, a good smashy fighty, especially with the art and superhero comics. Sure. So good.
So the thing is that, okay, so because you mentioned a different pie. I thought it was Comics in Motion.
Comics in Motion is the network. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so we all have different shows on there. So mine's so Indie Comic Spotlight is on the Comics in Motion network. So there's like mandatory Marvel and DC, there's a show, and there's like Star Wars Comics and Canon is a show. And then the Comics in Motion flagship is where they watch movies in the comic books, read and do both. So it's like there's a bunch of different shows on the network. So we are part of Comics in Motion for sure. If you want to hear me, you'd go there. But every Thursday I have an indie comic show.
Okay, so for someone who's maybe more familiar with Marvel and DC stuff, and they want to start kind of dipping their toes into indie comics, is there a title or maybe like a graphic novel that you would say, okay, this is a good starting point? Or if you like, if you like the X-Men, you're going to like this, this other lesser known title. Is there, what would you recommend? I mean, if you got one or several,
Well, if you're looking for superhero stuff, I definitely say, like what IDW is doing right now, they've got a lot of really good superhero team stuff. They're trying to because IDW kind of started as a, as more like a existing IP, like they did Ash versus Evil Dead. And those are all really fun comics, but they're starting to bring in some comic book writers. I think Scott Snyder's coming over there, and they're bringing in some of that. But honestly, if you're not sure where to start, I would truly go back to those early Image. Those were like some cool super teams. My favorite one was always Will Spartacchio's Wetworks. That's a limited run too, because he had to quit for personal reasons. So that's an easy one to do. Like Savage Dragon is still running. So if you want, it's still going. Eric Larson, I think he's like in the 700 or 800s by now.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And that is really still funny. It still brings a lot of that. It's like, imagine if the Hulk were a dragon, but also a police, but he was like a cop before he got turned into a superhero, but he just stayed being a cop. It's like really silly, but it knows what it is. So that is still
I can't
going.
believe that's still, because I got those because I was in college when those came out, and I think I have like the first 3 years worth, and then I just lost interest. But just to hear that it's still going, that is amazing.
Yeah. So I think that's big fun. I think I really do dig what Boom Studio is doing now with that. They bought and I know this is superheroes, but they bought the Buffyverse. And so they're rebooting Buffy and Angel and Firefly. But what they've decided is that Buffy and Angel, the original series, still exists. So it's just like they got way ahead of the multiverse before everybody else did. And so that's pretty fun. Like imagine Buffy with a cell phone. So that's interesting because it changes the dynamics there. I mean, I do tend to like some of my favorite indie comics are not superhero indie comics. Like I Kill Giants, which is about a little girl who's, which is a heartbreaker. And I love that book. Obviously Mouse is a great one. The Sandman from Vertigo is really good. And, and DC does have a good line of like their darker comics, their Black Label stuff. It's hard to tell it. It's hard to know where to start. It's hard to know what you like. Like a friend of mine, he is game. So I was like, "Ooh, let's read Cowboy Ninja Viking." And he read it and he was like, "I really hate you that I said yes to come on your show and talk about Cowboy Ninja." He had never read it before. And that is a really commentary on the superhero genre because it's about people who have been mentally manipulated to have dissociative identity disorder. And then they have to fight crime and fight each other. And it is really clever and fun. And it is like a comic books. It's a love letter to superhero comics while also kind of deconstructing it. So that run is over. So Cowboy Ninja Viking is a great book too.
Excellent. Justin, any more questions?
Well, I'm just curious, have you ever been to Comic-Con? I recently went for my first time. So as a comic lover, I got to ask.
No, the big one in San Diego. No, I've never been. I grew up in Michigan near Chicago. And so my dad was from Chicago. So I used to go to Chicago Con all the time. And now there's like Chicago Con and Wizard Con at the same time. So I spent a lot of time at cons in Motor City Con in Detroit and Chicago, and the Chicago Con in Detroit and in Chicago. And so during the big image revolution, I was there for that one. Like there were like lines out the door, and like Todd McFarlane, that was like he had his funny car, like he got into race cars, and so like the Spawn funny car was there. It was crazy. So I've been to those, but I've never been to San Diego. How was it, Justin? Was it amazing?
It was pretty epic. Like I think we talked about it on the show briefly recently, but it was a cool experience to like meet up with people that I know and just kind of hang out and like form those bonds, stronger. In terms of like all the panels and all that stuff, I'm like, conference is a conference. You go and you hear somebody talk and it's cool. But I mean, I couldn't get into the big ones because you got to wait like 4 hours to get into the big hall stuff, so the hall H or whatever. So I was just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, come on. I don't wait longer than 15 minutes at Disneyland. I'm not going to wait 4 hours for some random dude to talk to me. Come on.
Did you like Artist Row, right? That's still there though. Like that's always the most fun.
There. And I went with my buddy who will probably be on the show real soon, and he knew everybody. So I'm just following him around. He's like, hey, here's Justin. Hey, here's Justin. And so it's pretty epic in that regard.
That's so cool. Yeah, my friend of mine and I, when we went to Chicago Con years and years ago, we were in line. Like I don't remember who we were waiting to see, but like standing over here there's this guy with his portfolio and his indie comics, and he's like from Wisconsin, and he's like, here, you got to check out these books, and he's showing us all this stuff. It's fucking Mike Barron. I don't know if I can swear on your show. Sorry, I just did. You complete me, Mike Barron, and he's like showing us original sketches of Badger and Nexus, and you're just like, holy crap. So he was still just young, hungry Mike Barron, and it was so cool. So those are always the best, is when you just like wander through the tables, and then you're like, I met that. Like Jill Thompson was there, drawing Delirium and doing well before she did, with all of her dog stuff. It's like crazy. Yeah, that's so much fun at those places.
Is there a recommendation from you for people who feel like they need to know everything about comics but don't know where to start? Your podcast, other avenues?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I do think so for me, the Indie Comic Show, because we come in it, I do a little explanation of what the comic is. There's a friend of mine, Paul, who's the one who did Cowboy Ninja Viking with me. He has a series called Superheroes for Dummies, which it started with he and a couple of his friends. They would actually answer questions and like literally break down so Paul is the dummy. He doesn't know anything. And then Dan knows a little bit. And then Steve, they call him the Nerd Yoda. He knows everything. So people would send in questions about whatever. So they did like one on the Robins, like all the different Robins. They did one on Batman. They did one on like the difference between, Shazam and Captain Marvel. And they did all those. So it's like his website, I think, is superhero or superdummy.co.uk because he's British. That's a cool place because he does all of that. There are some really good podcasts though that are out there about this, so it's always just a good place to search. But I would start with Paul, and so because he does the superhero for dummies, and then he does a lot of fun stuff there. I just think the problem is, right, it's so overwhelming now. Everything is in the middle of an arc and they're rebooting a thing and all of that. So if you have a library card, go to the library and just pull something off the shelf, right? Or get Hoopla Digital, the Hoopla Digital app, and read it on your iPad, because then it's the artists get the money because they bought the book, or they pay the check. Like Hoopla, each time you check something out on Hoopla, the artist gets the money. Do that, and then just try something, and then it's risk free to you. They got a few dollars, because it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah. We read a lot on Comixology and Kindle Unlimited, and we have the library app, and so my kids just plow through a lot of these things recently. I keep catching them reading weird, like, romance ones, and I'm like,
The Archie books are still going, though. I don't know how old your kids are, but the Archie's still really good. Like, it is really impressive how relevant it stayed, and it's good to keep them reading the real Archie as opposed to watching Riverdale, which was
I'll try pushing them toward it. We'll see what happens. I've tried before, and they're like, "What is this? It looks old." And they're into webtoons, especially lately. So
those are fun. Yeah,
for sure. I got nothing else. Paul, back to you.
No, I think that's it. Okay, the website is arfarina.com. So Tony or Anthony or AR, he goes by so many names.
Yes. Professor at my job. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. There's that too.
Amazing.
And the book, Welcome to Mansfield, the Austen Chronicles, book 1. Is that available now, or is it coming out soon?
It came out. No, it came out in May.
Fantastic. And when and you said book 2 is?
It comes out in end of April, or April of next year.
April of next year.
It's already in the public, the editors, it's in their hands. And then my collection about, I wrote a critical essay on Judge Dredd that's out through Sequart, but I have a new one that I'm in, a Moon Knight collection that's coming out by the end of the year. Yeah.
Cool. And are there other places on social media where people can find you?
I'm on Instagram, and that's the place I do the most things. I have a Facebook page, but I don't do much. So social media, I'm not great with it, but yeah, Instagram is just AR Farina on Instagram. And you can link through my website, and you can sign up for my newsletter. I write my monthly newsletter is an essay because I can't help myself. Like, a lot of people's newsletters, like, here's what's up. I do that at the end, but here's the thing that I want to talk about. So I'll write like a 500-word essay, and I send it out to people like, you're welcome. Here you go. So far, no complaints. But if you want to get a random essay about stuff from me, you can find it. You can sign up on my website.
Fantastic. That website again is arfarina.com. Tony, thank you so much. This has been great stuff.
Thank you. I'm just honored to be. I'm just thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be nominated and honored to be chosen.
Well, you're very welcome. This has been great stuff. Justin, take it away.
All right. Well, once again, listeners, if you can leave reviews, that'd be awesome. Go check out Tony A.R. Farina's work. The book, we'll link it in the show notes, of course. Authors always love reviews, so hint. And once again, this is the Creative Writing Life podcast. I'm Justin Sloan. You can find my books on Amazon.
And I'm Paul Zeidman. You can check out my screenwriting blog, Maximum Z, at maximumz.blog. I'm also on Twitter, and I'm never going to call it X, at maximum_Z, and my Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, P-E-Z, Screenwriting. Like he said, he's Justin, he's Tony, I'm Paul. Thanks for listening. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Make sure you stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.